Let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking some truly fascinating source material that reveals a hard truth. Banks fundamentally change their behavior toward you based on one single metric, and that's the number sitting right next to your name. We're going to take a twisted, pretty eye-opening journey together, starting from a negative $4 balance and climbing all the way up to $25 million. And we're going to look at this entirely from the you perspective, because it really makes the systemic design of modern banking feel incredibly visceral. Okay, so we're starting at the absolute bottom, minus $4. You overdrafted by exactly $4 because of a coffee you totally forgot was scheduled to charge. Now the bank, they don't care that it was just a tiny $4 mistake. They only care about the math, and the math says you dropped below zero. So what's the immediate penalty for being broke? You guessed it, you get to be even more broke. A $35 fee slams into your account. That fee is literally bigger than the mistake itself, and it instantly plunges you into this structural friction that is just insanely difficult to escape. And this sets off what is essentially an avalanche of fees. While you're just sitting there staring at that first penalty, a $7 subscription you forgot to cancel processes. The system sees you're in the red, which triggers step 2. Boom, another $35 fee. The next morning, your rent fails. Step 3, your landlord slaps on a $75 late fee. Then your phone bill bounces. Step 4, another $25. You try calling the bank to explain, but you just get stuck on looping hold music, eventually reaching a representative, reading a script who tells you, sorry, fees can't be reversed. Suddenly, that $4 coffee has completely spiraled into $200 of debt, and you're skipping lunch just trying to survive the week. Which brings us to Section 1, penalized for being broke. Because at this level, to the bank, you aren't a customer. You're just a problem. Moving on to Section 2, invisible to profitable. We are now jumping from the $200 mark up to $2,000. Notice the absolute night and day difference in the human treatment here. Let's say you grind out 20 hours of overtime just to drag your account back into the positive. You walk into the branch with a $200 balance, hoping to sort things out. The teller looks at her screen and her whole face just shifts. It's not angry, it's not pitying, it's just completely cold. Because on that screen, you stop being a person. You're categorized. You're essentially a risk score with shoes. At that $200 tier, you're processed in 40 seconds flat, completely invisible. You're just moved along like luggage on a conveyor belt, only to check your app later and realize a quiet $12 maintenance fee was swiped because you didn't hit a minimum balance. But check out the difference when you hit $2,000. You walk up and suddenly the teller says, "Good morning." I mean, it's not exactly a warm smile, but it's not that cold silence either. It's recognition. You've officially unlocked the middle ground, where most Americans live, and you did it simply by having a slightly larger number on a screen. So the absolutely crucial thing to understand here is how the math fundamentally shifts. At $2,000, your consistent direct deposits are signaling to the system that you're predictable, and that annoying $12 maintenance fee, it magically disappears. Not because you complained, but because your behavior now matches a profitable profile. Back at $200, the only thing they'd offer you was a secured card at a brutal 24% interest. But at $2,000, you're getting actual credit card offers at 22%, and maybe an auto repair loan at 11%. You aren't invisible anymore. You are profitable. All right, Section 3, assets worth defending. Welcome to the $15,000 tier. At this tier, you might log into your app and realize your credit limit just doubled from $4,000 to $9,500. And you didn't even ask for it. The bank literally just decided you were worth more rope. The same institution that used to stick you on hold for 40 minutes is now dialing your direct line at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday just to schedule a friendly review. And the timeline of how things get handled is so jarring. Let's say a $32 fee accidentally hits your account at 9 in the morning. At the lowest tier, remember, that would ruin your whole week. But at $15,000? At noon, you send a super quick email to your relationship banker. By 12:05, you get a reply. Taken care of. No forms, no automated phone trees, no scripted apologies. The exact same fees that once aggressively drained your livelihood are suddenly entirely optional. And this number right here, this is the ultimate proof of your brand new status. If you go to buy a used car at this tier, the auto loan rate that would have been 11% back at the $2,000 level drops down to 6.8%. The actual price of money gets cheaper for you, not because you suddenly became a master negotiator, but purely because the algorithm looked at your math and decided you stopped being a risk. I want you to take a second to really absorb this quote from the source material. Indifference at scale looks exactly like cruelty. It's such a profound realization, right? The bank wasn't intentionally trying to be mean to you when you were broke. They were simply completely indifferent to your existence. It absolutely feels like cruelty when you're starving and begging for a reversed fee, but to the bank, you were just a line of code. But now that you have money, you aren't being invested in, you are being invested for. By the time you climb up to $80,000, congratulations, you're labeled a preferred client. The bank is actively courting you now. You literally get to physically bypass the velvet rope line at the local branch. They start mailing you $400,000 mortgage pre-approvals before you've even had a passing thought about buying a house. And if a competitor bank dares to offer you a better rate, your banker's calling you back within an hour with a counteroffer. The bank is now aggressively competing to defend you because you are a valuable asset. Section 4. Bending the bank's rules. We are now entering the $500,000 mark. At this point, the bank stops being a physical place that you have to go visit. Instead, it becomes a service that comes to you. A wealth management colleague will actually drive out to your office for a 90-minute consultation. And they aren't trying to push basic credit cards on you anymore. No, they're asking about your tax structures, your estate plans. They don't want you to buy a simple product. They want you to rely on their consultation. Now, let's break down some industry jargon here, because hitting $5 million is a whole different ballgame. Wealth management, which kicks in at $500,000, is a consultative service. But private banking, up at that $5 million tier, is a relationship. And relationships don't follow standard rules, they negotiate them. You become one of maybe 20 accounts managed by a specific private banker who literally knows your kids' names and your exact coffee order. When you compare the standard rules against what happens at the 5 million mark, it's pretty mind-blowing. Standard published mortgage rates replaced by privately negotiated rates. Investment minimums totally waived. Standard paperwork that usually takes weeks to grind through, processed and finalized in 48 hours. When you're sitting in a plush conference room with no logo on the door, discussing deals that don't even exist on a public prospectus, the bank has stopped following the rules. They are actively bending them exclusively for you, simply because the sheer size of the relationship justifies it. Finally, Section 5. The system working perfectly. Welcome to being a $25 million partner. At this massive tier, your relationship with the bank is an actual literal line item in a private banker's performance review. Their entire career trajectory hinges on keeping you happy. The institution isn't just competing for you, it physically organizes its own workforce around making sure they don't lose you. At this ultimate level of influence, you are a partner. Deals are structured around your potential participation before you've even agreed to them. You have 3 separate bank employees whose primary existence is just to service your account. But honestly, the wildest shift is that the bank's chief investment officer might actually fly out to consult you on emerging markets. You don't apply for things anymore. Things apply for you. You are actively shaping the very institution that, a few tiers ago, penalized you for buying a cup of coffee. But meanwhile, somewhere out there right now, a balance reads -$4. We snap right back to the beginning. Someone is staring at a screen in a panic because of a forgotten coffee overdraft. The $35 fee hits. The hold music is looping. The script is being read. They are currently being charged money for not having enough money by the exact same institution that is flying across the country to ask a $25 million client for their opinion. Which brings us to the core thesis of this explainer. The system is working exactly the way it was built to. The system isn't broken. Think about it. You are the exact same human being at a -$4 balance as you are at $25 million. You have the exact same intrinsic value as a person. But the bank? It completely changes its mask, it changes its rules, and it completely transforms its treatment of you based entirely on the math sitting next to your name. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought to chew on. The bank itself doesn't change, but who does your bank think you are? It is absolutely a question worth asking the next time you log into your banking app, or wait in a velvet rope line, or get hit with a random fee. Take a step back and think about how your financial institution categorizes you and what tier you're currently living in. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the systems around you.